Hi, Simon Chapple here. I'm the Quit Alcohol Coach, and today I wanted to share with you 10 reasons why I don't drink alcohol any longer. Now, if you enjoy the videos on my channel, there's new ones every Tuesday and every Thursday. Make sure you subscribe by hitting the little red button on the screen and also click the bell icon so that you get notified whenever a new video is released. So let's talk about 10 reasons why I don't drink alcohol any longer. Hopefully it'll give you some motivation or some food for thought about why you maybe don't drink alcohol or why you want to stop drinking. The first reason is that when I was drinking, I became a crap parent and I was also a really bad husband. Sure, I was present in body, but I certainly wasn't present in mind. I would often be dismissive, grumpy, snappy, and my son didn't know which version of me he was going to get. If I'd been drinking, I could be difficult to deal with and argumentative and unreasonable. And I was the same with my wife. Whereas if I hadn't been drinking, I was either hungover or it would be the normal version of me. He was unsure. It created uncertainty and that put him on edge. It made him feel anxious. And I know with my wife that I was always putting alcohol in front of her and in front of my son too. And I made it the most important thing in my life when in fact it should have been my family. And I don't ever want to be in a place where I feel like I'm a bad parent, where I feel like I'm a bad husband. And that's one big reason, which is why I put it first, that I no longer drink alcohol, because for me, that really is something that's so important. Since I quit, my relationship with my son and my wife has completely transformed. He now feels safe and confident. He knows that when he's talking to me, he's always getting a consistent version. He feels comfortable opening up to me about things that he would never have spoken to me about when I was drinking. And my wife also feels the same. I think she's more comfortable that she doesn't have these mood swings going on and somebody who's unreasonable, obsessed with drinking, and is present both in body and in mind. Now, the second reason that I don't drink alcohol is the amount of money I've saved. I was spending around £30 every day, so that's maybe $35 every day on alcohol. But it wasn't just the money I was saving on spending alcohol. I run my own business, and because of the amount I was drinking, I was simply showing up. And when I say showing up, I wasn't showing up and being productive, motivated, and full of energy. I was just there. And I wasn't giving my business the attention that it deserved. And over the years that I was drinking, that probably cost me an absolute fortune in lost business due to opportunities missed, the fact that I was asleep on the job effectively. So as well as the huge cost of spending £30 every day on alcohol, there was a much bigger cost financially in terms of how much I lost within my business. And of course, when we add up the amount we drink every day, we tend to just think of our regular drinking habit, which often is at home. So I would normally buy 2, 3 bottles of wine, some beers on top as well. But when we think of the financial cost of a drinking habit, we tend to just think about what we buy to drink at home. So for me, it was 2 or 3 bottles of wine. And I used to think the more expensive they were, the more sophisticated it was, and therefore the further away from a hobo in the park who was drinking hard spirits that made me. It actually eased my mind if I spent more on the wine because it seemed more sophisticated. And connoisseurs of wine don't have a problem, do they? Of course they do. And I'd also buy beers each day as well. But what I wasn't factoring in that cost, and I didn't factor in a moment ago, was the additional cost when we go out socially. We end up losing our inhibitions and we start to buy big rounds of drinks for people, for example. We might eat more than we normally do. We might buy takeaway food on the way home. We might buy drinks that we don't even want. So we can go out and easily get through £100, £150 in a night when we're drinking heavily. And this is on top of the day-to-day cost. So when you factor it right over the course of a year or a decade, it can be enormous amounts of money. And in fact, I did a little calculation before I made this video. So £30 every day is £11,000 over a year. So over a decade, that's £110,000. Bear in mind, I was drinking for well over 2 decades. If you add into that a couple of social nights out every month, at around £100, which I think is actually on the low side, that's another £2,500 a year. So now we're talking 13,500 every year. And then if we factored in all of the lost business, and my business has been running for about 14 or 15 years, I'd say easily that's another 100, £150,000 probably lost, where I was just not present, not proactive, not energized. So factoring it all in, £135,000 over the last decade on alcohol purchases and food purchases and nights out that I probably wouldn't have even gone to had I not been drinking. Say another £100,000 in lost income into my business. We're talking nearly £250,000. So that really is one good reason why I don't drink anymore. The third reason, and it was a huge reason for me, was the impact alcohol was having on my health. Now, I didn't have any huge specific issues, but one of my friends died at the age of 47 from liver disease, which really gave me a huge wake-up call. And I'd also noticed that my hands were beginning to shake uncontrollably in the mornings when I'd been drinking, and that scared me. I'd learned a lot about the impact alcohol can have on our hearts and on our livers, and of course on our mental health as well as our physical health. And quite simply, I didn't want to die. I wanted to at least get to the age of 50. And all of these things together combined in a fear that built inside of me where I wanted to live free. I didn't want to live with a fear and a worry constantly that alcohol was damaging me from the inside out and eventually was going to probably kill me. The fourth reason that I don't drink alcohol is I don't do things I regret any longer. I used to do so many things that I regretted, even on my own wedding, which I can barely remember because I was so drunk. I was dancing on the table. I was removed by security guards. The number of text messages I've sent and woken up the next morning looking at my phone, I can't even remember that I've sent them. I'm cringing about the things that I've said. And there's a whole bunch of other things, arguments, stupid comments, things that I just wouldn't have said if I was present and my normal self without alcohol involved. And I didn't want to be carrying out those regrettable behaviors. They weren't me. It was like it was somebody else. And it was easy to say, well, I was drunk, so it was a mistake. But that's not the person that I want to be. That's not the way that I want to live. I want to be authentic and I want to be true to myself. And I want that true version of me present at all times that I'm awake. So no more regrettable behavior. Sure, we all make mistakes and occasionally I do things that I regret, but I can do it now in a way where I'm fully present and I can instantly make amends or take action if I do something that I regret. But it's rare. Those instances are few and far between. Now I can think, I can plan, I can consider the consequences of my actions. When I was drinking, there was no considering. I would just jump straight in. I was trying to be this party animal that impressed my friends. I was giving them a version of myself that was completely false, but I thought it was what they wanted to see. And that was the mask that I was wearing, where I had never connected with the true version of who I really was. I just wanted to be liked and accepted by the people around me. And I thought that being a heavy drinking, boozy party monster was what they wanted to see. So that was exactly what I did. So there's no more regrettable behavior. And that's a huge thing. And again, that's not just with my friends, that's with my family and my wider circle as well. The fifth reason that I don't drink alcohol is the impact it was having on my mental health. My anxiety was going through the roof. Every year it seemed to get worse. Every year I seemed to drink more to try and ease it. I had mood swings and I was often in a really dark mood. I was borderline depressed and I was really, really struggling. I didn't join the dots up. I didn't realize that alcohol was actually contributing to my heavy anxiety and my low moods. When I finally worked it out and put the pieces of the puzzle together and was able to cut alcohol out of my life, within a couple of months, the the anxiety began to fade, and things that used to faze me and cause a huge, overwhelming emotional reaction, they no longer did. Something that might have been an 8 or 9 out of 10 in the past suddenly became a 2 or 3 out of 10. I felt calmer, I felt mentally tougher and able to cope with situations that previously would have knocked me off of my center. And that was a huge thing for me. So the fact that I've been able to alleviate my anxiety, bring it back down to what I would consider normal levels, the fact that I'm no longer having mood swings and I'm not walking around with a dark cloud hanging over me most of the time is absolutely incredible. And I mentioned money earlier. For me, this is better than all the money in the world because I actually feel like I've got happiness, calm and peace in my life for the first time since I was a teenager. And that is an amazing thing. And that alone is another reason not to drink. Now, the sixth reason that I don't drink alcohol is that it makes me look better. It makes me look younger. I took a selfie when I was drinking just before I quit, and I've taken a few subsequently since I've been sober. And the difference in my face is incredible, particularly the darkness under my eyes. There's no blotchiness on my skin. My skin looks smoother and glowing. Now, my hair hasn't grown back yet. I'm assured that that will happen after 5 years without alcohol. Maybe it won't. And I think when we quit drinking, I see it all the time. People can look like 10 years younger. When you don't drink alcohol, you don't need Botox. You don't need expensive beauty treatments because you look better and much, much better. And it makes a massive difference. And one of the biggest things I noticed was my face actually became slightly thinner, where it was bloated and my body was hanging on to every drop of hydration that it could get because I was drinking so heavily. So it was a huge motivator for me because when I noticed these things, which by the way, I started seeing these changes after 3 or 4 weeks without alcohol, particularly around my eyes, where I was starting to get much better sleep. It really did kick me on. It was like a springboard. I thought, well, if all of this is changing on the outside, imagine what's happening on the inside to my brain, to my internal organs, to the rest of my body. You know, this was really a visual sign that everything was changing and everything was getting better for me. And I like it. I like to see those changes and the fact that I feel like I'm showing up as the best version of myself. Now, of course, there's an element of this which is slightly superficial and potentially you could say ego driven, but I think it's important to just notice those changes. Notice that your body is showing you that it can be better and that you were neglecting it. So I don't think this should be done from a place of superficial, ego-driven, look how beautiful somebody is. It's more around the fact that your body is showing up as the best version of itself. And I'm sure that's what you want. A body that's hydrated, that's getting the right amount of sleep, skin that looks good, that looks glowing. You know that it's in tip-top condition. And that's absolutely what you want. The seventh reason that I don't drink alcohol is that I discovered many of my friendships were superficial. Alcohol had become the glue that held a lot of the friendships together. And we would talk about rubbish. We would never connect on an emotional level. We would never share our feelings with each other. And on social nights out, the talk was more around how much we were drinking and stupid pranks, that kind of thing. There was never any true connection. Now, a lot of those friends I'm still great friends with, but I tend to connect with them over a coffee. I wouldn't want to go out drinking with them. One or two I have drifted apart from, and I'm absolutely okay with that. But I've made so many new friends, friends both in the sober community and new friends who I've met in other areas of life. For example, where I get involved in fitness and boot camps, things like that, where they might drink and that's fine. But alcohol is not at the center of the picture. The activities we're doing are not based around alcohol. So we're able to connect on a totally different level. And that's a really wonderful thing. And I'm also part of an amazing men's group where we're able to share our feelings, drop our egos, talk about things that are affecting our lives and share with absolute honesty and with no judgment whatsoever. And I would never have done any of this if I'd continued drinking. And to be able to connect with people on a completely different level where you can share your innermost secrets and know that you're not going to be judged, you're not going to be shamed, you're actually going to be supported and be able to let go of any discomfort, really is an amazing thing. And as I say, I would never, ever have got involved in those sort of friendships, those sort of connections, had I continued drinking. The eighth reason that I don't drink alcohol is because I wasn't in touch with who I really was. Of course, at the time, I didn't realize it, but having quit, I've been able to start feeling my feelings, wearing my inside on the outside, if that makes sense, showing my feelings to people and expressing my feelings in a healthy way. But when I was drinking, I was running away from uncomfortable emotions, challenging things from my past that I just didn't want to face up to. And there was no connection with the real version of me. I was showing up as a false version of myself, wearing a mask, and I was just being who I thought other people wanted me to be. In a work environment, I would try and be the professional, go-getting, driven businessman, although I was never fully present at work anyway, but I would try my best to put that facade on. And then socially, the persona would be one of a heavy drinking party animal. And again, it was all because that was what I thought people wanted to see. I've stopped people pleasing. I've learned to be able to say no to things that I don't want to do or don't want to get involved in. And it's given me great power to be able to make choices. I've realized that I'm in the driving seat of my life. Before, alcohol was in the driving seat. I would just nod my head and say yes when people asked me things. I'd never give it much thought. I just assumed, well, if someone's asked, I've got to do it. I don't want to upset them. I don't want to get into conflict. Now I'm able to say no. Now I'm able to express my feelings. If somebody does something or certain behavior causes me to feel something negative, I will express it, and I'll set healthy boundaries if I need to so that it can't happen again. Again, none of this would have come about had I not quit drinking. It's an absolute gift, and I'd urge you to try it. If you've never had a break from alcohol, give yourself 30 days or 60 days and notice all of these amazing changes happening in your life. Some of them can take longer than others, but you will see changes starting to happen, and they will spur you on. They will kick you on to keep going, to become alcohol free and know that it's the best life you can possibly live. The ninth reason that I don't drink alcohol is because it had complete control of my life. I would think about alcohol most of the time. If I wasn't drinking, I was thinking about when I could start, when I would be going to the store to buy alcohol, how much I was going to have tonight, how much I drank the night before, or I was thinking about the fact that I was hungover or feeling sick or dwelling on regrettable behavior that I'd carried out the night before. And it simply controlled my life. Alcohol controlled me. I didn't control it. It took a long time for me to realize that it was an addiction and that I needed to do something about it. But eventually I got to that place. But there was a long time where I had internal conflict in my mind, where my conscious mind wanted me to stop drinking, yet my subconscious kept trying to reassure me that my alcohol intake was absolutely fine and everybody else drank like I did. Of course, that wasn't the case. And forget what everybody else drinks. I'd begun to believe that it was a problem and I needed to make a change. And it took time. And it took time to get my conscious and subconscious mind on the same page so that they stopped fighting with each other. And then I was free to move forward without willpower, without a huge struggle of internal conflict. And that was an absolutely huge thing for me. And it set me up for success going forward in other areas of my life, noticing when I've got an internal conflict going on and knowing that I can overcome that, being able to think things through in much more depth. I think one of the biggest things that happens when you quit drinking is you become incredibly self-aware. You start to notice feelings, you start to pay more attention to yourself and take care of yourself in a way that you actually deserve. You start to love yourself, which is something that so many of us have failed to do. We've neglected it. We're so busy thinking about alcohol and trying to please other people, we simply forget to look after ourselves. And of course, if we're unable to love ourselves, how can we ever love anybody else? So we've got to do that. We've got to take that emotional brick wall down. And I'd absolutely put up an emotional brick wall where I'd been hurt in my early years with my father abandoning me, other trauma happening to me, emotional neglect happening. I'd put up this huge emotional brick wall. I didn't want to get hurt again. I didn't let any emotions out and I didn't allow any emotions in. That was my safety strategy, my defense mechanism. And sure, maybe in childhood for a period of time, that might have served me. But as I moved into adult life, it hindered me. And I just began drinking more and more and more to escape this stuff. I didn't even know why it was happening until I began to explore it, until I began tracing back behaviors in my present life and how they linked with my past. When I started joining the dots up, it all began to make so much sense. And it's been a huge journey of exploration and one of the most wonderful things that I've done in my life. Now, the final reason that I don't drink alcohol is I was permanently hungover. I didn't realize it at the time, but my mind had a constant fog. There was just like a dull thud in my mind all the time. And I mean 24/7. It was with me always. And I would start drinking early in the evening, which would dull it out a little bit. And then the next morning it was back again. I'd become used to it. It was just my normal. And I thought that was how I was. And it wasn't until I quit drinking that this constant fog that I'd lived with for over 20 years began to fade away and everything became clear. It was almost like a TV coming on in high definition that had been rather fuzzy up until that moment. And when I saw that and felt what it was like to actually have a clear mind and not to have this fuzzy fog of hangover permanently with me, I just wanted to be like that all the time because it was so incredible. But I didn't realize at the time that that was what was going on. I just got used to it and accepted it and put it down possibly to being part of my drinking or possibly it to being how I was. And in fact, I didn't even really think about it. I just wanted to drink and that was all I was bothered about. So when that fog and that fuzz cleared away, it really was an incredible feeling to start to see the world with complete clarity. And equally, I was no longer just looking at one thing. All my focus used to be on alcohol. It was the only thing that I really saw in the world. My lens widened when I quit drinking. I started to see the world in a bigger context, as a bigger picture. I could see things much wider and I noticed things. I was paying attention to things and I was spending my time in a much more healthy and productive way, enjoying walks in nature, taking up new sports, engaging with people. And it really was a wonderful, wonderful thing. I used to think sober people were boring. I used to laugh at people who didn't drink. I thought they were stupid. I thought it was pointless. Why would you even do that? Because alcohol had just been ingrained in me from a very early age. But once I was able to break free and see what it actually felt like to live an alcohol-free life, it was one of the most incredible things. It was like somebody had turned on the lights in a previously dark and gloomy place in my mind and in my body. And when the lights came on, the energy returned, the happiness returned. And that's the big thing. The biggest takeaway in all of this is that I'm happier. And for me, that's the purpose of human existence. We all want to be happy, and I feel happier. So quitting drinking and all of those reasons I mentioned, ultimately it all boils down to that one thing. I am 100, 1,000 times happier than I was when I was drinking. And if you haven't quit yet, I urge you, I invite you to try it. Try it for a period of time, because if I'm telling you I'm 100 or 1,000 times happier, I'm not lying. I mean it. And all the other people who talk about being sober, they mean it too. You never hear anybody complaining about being sober. The only people you hear complaining are the people who are still drinking. So know that this can increase your happiness in a way that you've probably never, ever experienced. And if you are already sober, I'd love to hear in the comments below the reasons why you don't drink. What are the top reasons that you don't drink? Feel free to comment on those. I'd love to hear what you have to say. So until next time, I hope those reasons help. Maybe they'll motivate you. Maybe you found yourself nodding your head if you're already sober because you share some of those same reasons yourself. But either way, I hope they provide you with some inspiration and some insight.